Hi, my name is Michele Yu. My craft is production design. I am a member of IATSE Local 800, and my pronouns are she, her.
Did you come from a union household?
Oh gosh, no, I did not come from a union household. My parents were immigrants. I am first generation Chinese Filipino, and growing up, I really didn't even consider the importance of unions. I didn't consider how that would play into my career path. There was just no context for it. I definitely did not have connections in Hollywood when I started my career.
What brought you to the union, or what was your first experience with the union?
My first experience with the union was very recent, actually, and a bit late in what I think a usual career would be in this industry. I worked non-union for well over a decade, production designing, working in art department, doing a little bit of every job, non-union, mostly in features. And, I was making a living doing that. It was a full-time job. Anybody who has worked non-union features in, specifically I'm in Los Angeles, understands what a beast that is and what a beast that can be. So we ended up joining because a job that happened to be union wanted to hire us. And by virtue of having worked so long in non-union, we easily had all of the days needed to join. We had laid the groundwork prior to that by getting on the roster at Contract Services, just getting set up for the day, theoretically, mystically, in the future, we might join IATSE. And when it happened, we hadn't planned for it. It was just something we had to do in order to take a job we wanted. But, we never looked back from there. So every job that I've done since that point, the past few years, has been a union job.
What is the most satisfying part of your job?
The most satisfying part of my job has changed, and it's actually recently a pleasure that I have had, is that because of all of the shifts in conversation around culture and representation, more projects are being greenlit these days and funded these days that feature different perspectives. And very, very recently, my last show that I did earlier in the year was American Born Chinese. And it was something that I was very excited to be able to work on and given the opportunity to work on. It's not an opportunity that ever existed before. The amount of content being created on a well-funded level for Asian American talent, Asian American stories, that did not exist for most of my life. And the fact that things are really ramping up on that in that regard now, and that I was invited in to join a crew of not completely, but very dominantly Asian American department heads and writers and directors and other creatives was incredibly meaningful. And it was so satisfying to be able to finally tell a story that was so personal. That is what I have found to be incredibly satisfying in recent times, especially this year, just to have an outlet for stories that are personal to me and experiences that are incredibly personal to me, and be able to use my skills and my creativity and my experience as a human being and as a production designer to show visually what it is like to grow up as an Asian American person in California, specifically for our show. But, that as much as it's satisfying on other shows and on other levels to tell visual stories and test new ideas and, be asked to do something impossible and then pull it off, there was nothing more satisfying than being asked to think about how I grew up and replicate it and show people what it was like. Nobody's ever asked that question before, not of me, not of Asian Americans, not really not in a real way where people actually cared what that was really like, as opposed to an idea of what that should have been like. So that was really great. And I really want to do help tell more of those stories. And I think we're headed in a direction where that's going to be possible.
Is anything else you actually want to touch on?
So I'm in season 4 of a show where most of the department heads, all of the creative, the writing, the writer's room, our EPs, our showrunner are all women of color, for the most part. I would say 95% women of color. And it's not a situation, but it's an interesting experience that I've had, because it feels very different than other shows I've been on. And that's a very positive space, and it's a supportive space, and it's a space where the people in charge have had to live in this world with struggle to get where they are. All of them are incredibly talented. All of them are some of the smartest people I've ever met in my whole life. And the level of excellence they have to bring to the table is incredibly intense in order to get where they are. You don't get to be a showrunner if you're a woman of color, if you're not literally one of the best people in the world in this industry, just because of how things have been, for the entire history of America, I'm going to say. So it's incredibly nice to understand that the people who are working above you get it, and where you're coming from, and why some things might be a struggle, and why you might push back on some things, and they don't misinterpret the way some people can when you're fighting for something, or when you're taking a certain tone to explain what you need. A lot of times, working as a woman in this industry, especially, much less a woman of color, it's always a struggle. And I think every woman understands this, where if you assert yourself, and if you fight for what you need and what your team needs, there is often a very different reaction to you asking for something than there is if a man asks for it, or if someone who's not a person of color asks for it. There are certain things that are assumed about you. There are certain things that are assumed about them that gives other people a little bit more leeway to be strong, come across as strong, and a little bit of an expectation where if you're demanding something and not quietly, very subserviently asking for it, that you're being rude somehow. So it's nice to be in a crew and in a team and on a show where you're not misinterpreted in that way, because every single woman at the table has had that experience, and they know why you're taking that tone. It's because you need something, and you're trying to express as strongly as you can on behalf of the people who are depending on you, something that's going to be better all around for everybody, and to be respected off the bat instead of questioned. So that's less of a specifically IA thing, but it is something relevant to unions, and relevant to being stronger together, and being stronger when you understand where your peers are coming from, and being able to advocate for each other. So it's, again, not IATSE specific really of an experience, except insofar as it's on a union show, but it really speaks to the strength of folks working together in numbers, and being willing to listen to each other, and listen to what you're going through, and take that into consideration before you just say no, or stand in the way.